Hi friends, it's Michelle Hansen coming to you from Quimby Cottage in northern Michigan. It is 51 degrees outside, so I'm inside the cottage today in the little living room, and it's the middle of October, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be leaving here in about 10 days. If you're new, my name is Michelle, and I live in a cute little 800 square foot summer house in Petoskey, Michigan in the summertime, and we do not have insulation, but we do have heat. This cottage was built in 1889, and it is charming. It's two bedrooms upstairs. Legally, I don't think anybody would call them bedrooms. No real estate agent would call them bedrooms. And then we have a little kitchen, a bathroom, and a small living room, and then a lovely porch. And we are here usually sometime in May until sometime in October. And then we have to shut down because it's not warm enough to be here throughout the winter. But I love it, and the season is coming to an end, and that makes me feel a little bit sad. I have to tell you, I cry every year when I leave, even though, I don't know. I've been doing it a while. You'd think that I would have some practice, but I cry every year, so there's that. I thought I would start today by telling you what I'm wearing, and I'm wearing something special to me. So this is the February Lady Sweater by Pamela Wynn, and this is my very first grown-up sweater. I had knitted a couple of raglan pullover style sweaters for my children when they were young, but I had never made an adult sweater until I made this. So I made this in 2013 when we lived in Pittsburgh. The yarn store that I bought my yarn from at that time was called Bloomin' Yarns. They were going out of business. So I bought a sweater's worth of Malabrigo worsted, which is a single ply yarn, and I knit myself this sweater. And I was super proud of myself. And did I say this already? I knit it in 2013. It was my very first adult sweater. I was super proud of myself. I love this sweater because of all the things I learned. So there is a lace pattern on the sleeve, as you can see. And it was pretty easy to memorize, but this was the first all over lace pattern that I had ever done. I did one shawl before this, and then I knit this whole sweater. So actually, now that I look at it, there's probably like a mistake or something there. I'd have to look at it with my glasses, but that looks a little bit wonky. Anyway, I don't mean to point out my mistakes. I'm just showing you that this is where I started. So I love this sweater. It's warm. The yarn is Malabrigo worsted. It's a single ply, very fun to knit. But over time, I learned that it pills like crazy. So I don't know if you can see that this is pilled quite a bit. Also, at that time, I wasn't exactly thinking of style as much as I was thinking about, could I wear something or could I knit something? I probably wouldn't make this again, but I loved making it, and I do leave it up here to wear. I wear this a lot at the cottage. I bought one skein too few on this, and I didn't know about carrying two yarns together, like when you use a hand knit yarn, when you use a hand dye yarn, usually you knit one or two rows with one yarn, and then you knit one or two rows with the other ball of yarn so that you can blend the hand dyes together. I didn't know how to do that, but I did that on the sleeves here. I don't know if you can see, but there's definitely some darker in here. That's because I bought one skein too few, and I had to blend in the other yarn, the other ball of yarn, into the sleeves, and I think you can see it on this sleeve too. But the rest of this is just all one single, and it did blend together pretty nicely, I'd say. And then the buttons were a big deal. These are mother of pearl. There was a little button shop in Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, where I literally took the sweater and laid it out, and we looked at all the buttons, and these were the buttons that I bought. They were probably pretty expensive for buttons, but everybody talks. When I wear this, I always get compliments on the buttons. So should I ever get rid of it, I'm definitely taking these buttons off and carrying them with me. They're beautiful buttons. Can you see them? They're just lovely. I love this sweater. I want to tell you the story of what happened when I knitted it. So if any of you have knit your first sweater, you know what that feels like. It's a huge deal. You've just made your own garment from scratch. You've spent a long time on it. This sweater took me, I looked back on my Ravelry page before I sat down to talk to you. It took me 2 months to make. It just I was so, so proud of it. I remember that I wore it. It was not blocked. The threads were still hanging. It had not been woven in yet. I just put it on. I was going to wear it to the button shop, and I stopped at a friend's house and said, look what I made. And she looked at me and she said, how much did that cost? And I instantly knew that this conversation was not going to go where I wanted it to, because I wanted her to say, yay, you made a sweater all by yourself. How fantastic is that? So then I told her, and she reminded me that I could have bought a sweater for less. Just so you know, we move a lot for Mr. Hansen's job. I had not known her for very long, and I think you don't need to know that we didn't have a lot in common, and we have not maintained that relationship. Whenever I wear that sweater, I always think about that person telling me that I could have bought a sweater for less than I knitted, totally missing the concept of all the things that I learned when I made this, and the fact that it took me 2 months, and so I was out of trouble for that full 2 months, and then at the end of it, I have this lovely wearable garment, which is now 7 years old, and I'm still wearing, and isn't it fantastic? So, yay. Now, let's talk about what I finished. Are you big fans of Remembrance Pottery? Because I am. She has beautiful pottery, which I don't own any, but I love to admire it online, and she has beautiful designs in socks. There are several great things about them. One, they're super fun to knit, and two, if you knit them in a larger gauge, they can be Christmas stockings, which I think is fantastic. If you're the kind of person who's looking for something beautiful and timeless, you should check out her patterns. My first attempt at knitting Colorwork Socks was when she designed the Advent calendar socks for last year, 2019, where every day you knit a stripe on your socks, a colorwork section, and at the end of Advent you have 2 socks, and so you can wear them on Christmas morning if you've done the cuffs and heels and toes as well, because you sort of have to work those in yourself. I loved it. I loved looking through my stash yarn and trying to figure out what I was going to use. My friend Ingrid did that also, and so we talked a lot about what we were going to use, which I loved. We swapped yarns, which I thought was great, and it was really fun to follow the hashtag and see what other people were doing. Let me just tell you, I can't remember who did it. Somebody did a 3 colors only, so mine is wild, and my 2 stripes don't match. My 2 socks don't match. The patterns are the same, but the colors are different, because I had a hard time deciding, and it was so fun to do that. When it first sat out, when the pattern first came, I laid it all out, and I planned and I plotted, and then partway in I switched it up, because it's really like the maximum fun. If I could only knit one thing in this world, it probably would be Colorwork Socks. At the moment, if you asked me that at the moment. I remember last year at this time, I probably would have told you the answer was tiny sweaters. So, you know, it changes. But anyway, I loved knitting it, and I'm super looking forward to doing it again this year. And I just can't wait. So somebody did the whole sock in only 3 colors. It is stunning. I'll see if I can find out who it is and put it right here for you. It was stunning. I loved it. I really wanted to make another pair just like that. But you know what happens. You know, squirrel, and you're off you are to the next thing. But she has a new pattern out soon, sometime soon, and it's called the Redwork and Stitchery Socks. And I was lucky enough to test knit it, and can I show you? Now look at these. They're beautiful. See that? They're sort of mirror of themselves all the way down, and then I needed to add a bit of length. So she gives several optional charts to do that. Look at that. Look at that on the back. And then look at the bottom of the foot. Let me show you the bottom of the foot. Can I show you the bottom of the foot? Look at that. And so again, this is that chart that I added. But isn't that beautiful? They're stunning. I love them. I loved knitting them. I just think they're so beautiful. So I am a big fan of Henry VIII and that Tudor period of history. I sometimes watch a little bit of trashy TV, and I watched The Tudors on Netflix, which I had already seen before. I'm admitting everything to you now. I had already seen it before because I'm a huge fan, and I watched. It's a little bit trashy. It's quite racy, but I loved watching it, and I watched it again while I was knitting this because does this remind you of Tudor times? So the name of the pattern is called Redwork and Stitchery Socks, and it's based on that Redwork style of stitching where you stitch a lot of things on red. You know, your pattern is on red and on a white background, and it's very beautiful. I really liked the tone-on-tone idea. I really struggled. We're at Quimby Cottage, and it's pink outside, so the cottage is pink. And a lot of things in here are pink. We have pink everywhere. So it was easy to go to these pinks, but I also really toyed with the idea of a navy blue with a baby blue. I think that would be really beautiful. But these are super girly, and I'm really into them. So when the pattern comes out, you should definitely get it. I want to tell you, the way that she does the sock is different. I've never done the way the heel and toe is different. Look at how beautiful that is. So I don't know that I would do this on my sock. I really like my standard sock because it's my standard sock. I have it memorized. I can just do it. But I just think that's just so beautiful, that one beautiful line, and it fits the sock pattern so well. It just goes perfectly. And then that same detail is here in the heel. See that? It's beautiful. Big thumbs up. I loved knitting these. And I just think they're so beautiful. And someday, very soon, it seems like I'm going to have a sock drawer full of beautifully patterned socks. These are also really comfortable. It might be the yarn. I just chose the Cascade Heritage. It has a little bit of silk in it. It's very soft, very nice, and it's a super affordable yarn. So if you can find that near you, that's great. I found a big stash of it in a yarn store in the UP in Hessel, and I stocked up there. So the other thing I did was I bought more of the scrubby yarn. So remember last time I showed you these scrubbies. These are the Tawashi scrubbies, and I really liked knitting these. But then Leslie Friend was showing some that she had made that were round, like so. So you knit this, and it sort of looks like a Nike swoop, sort of, and then you fold it artfully, not terribly artfully. This is a lot more origami style. But you sort of fold it artfully, and then you just stitch it into a circle. And one ball of the Scrubology yarn made 4 of these. So one ball of the Scrubology yarn made 3 of these. One ball made 4 of these. And you can see, here, I'll turn it like this. You can see that these are slightly smaller. I liked knitting these a lot better than I liked knitting these. Did make 4 of these, but these are going to be my go-to pattern for scrubbies. I think I told you that I was doing things for Christmas, although I don't know that they're really just going to be Christmas. I definitely want to use these little scrubbies as stocking stuffers, but I also really think it's great to have a few handmade things ready for gift giving. So I have this shoebox full. So these are the Tawashi knots that I made. These are the other ones. And then these are the Tawashi knots on that other like weird yarn that I didn't like as much. And I've given some of these away already. And then lavender sachet, which doesn't need to be in here, but why not make all your knitting smell good? And then this is just that stack of cloths, face cloths or dishcloths that I made earlier. So you could get a nice bar of soap and wrap it in this, and it would be very nice. So it feels good to have a gift box like this all ready to go, and I could just, you know, pull something out of there. So it feels pretty good to have that full, but I'm done with dish scrubbies for a while now. I think that's all I finished. Isn't that terrible? That's all I finished. I haven't had as much time to knit as you think. Closing down the cottage takes a lot more work than you think. And we had guests, and so we went all over the place. We went to Tahquamenon Falls. I'll put a couple pictures actually in here of that. Tahquamenon Falls is the second largest waterfall east of the Mississippi. Of course, Niagara Falls is the first. So Tahquamenon Falls is in northern Michigan. It has a beautiful kind of caramel color water that comes down, which is from the tannins in the bark of the trees. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful area, and you kind of hike in, and there's the higher falls and the lower falls. So we did that. We went apple picking. We went to Wool and Honey, which is a really great yarn store around the Traverse City area, which is about an hour and a half maybe from here, south of us. So that was fun to do. We did the Tunnel of Trees, which is a nice little drive. And the fall color is very lovely at this time of year here. So we've been kind of busy, and I didn't do a lot of knitting. that was a long story of that. But I did start my Magnolia sweater, Magnolia cardigan, Magnolia chunky cardigan is what it's called. So I've started that, and here it is. I have just started the lace pattern at the bottom, so I'll show you that. And now I'm to the new part. There was I had to do a little bit of math. I normally knit all of my sweaters to be about 16 inches is to that leg break. And normally that's about what I knit my sweaters. I have bought a couple of tops that are a little bit longer recently, and I thought if I knit one that was a little bit shorter, it might be okay, and then let the color, like the pattern and color of this, kind of peek out a little bit. So I thought it would be okay to go a little shorter on this. The pattern says it's only 10 inches from the underarm to the bottom of the sweater, and that is way too short for me. So I did a little bit of math, and I decided to add 3 inches of plain knitting before I started the lace. So that should put me at about 13 inches. And then I saw in Ravelry that some people added an inch or an inch and a half extra of the twisted rib at the bottom. Normally, I hate doing twisted rib because it's kind of fatiguing on my hands, but I do really like the way that looks. Isn't that pretty? I'm really looking forward to doing that again at the end. And then also there's some on the sleeve detail as well. And I noticed in the pattern, the sleeves on most people come to a little longer than this, maybe like to here. I'm definitely going to do that. Sometimes I'm tempted to make a longer sleeve, but I think I'm not going to do that because the reason that I made this sleeve not long is because I do a lot of things in my sweaters. I mean, I do dishes and laundry and mop floors and clean bathrooms and garden and grocery shop, and whatever I'm doing, I wear my sweaters for that. They're not reserved for just, for example, office work or something like that. I actually live in my sweaters. So I found that sweaters that go just part way down and not all the way down to my wrist sometimes are more useful for me. And I did choose a cascade yarn for this. I wanted this, even though this is very beautiful. And let me tell you, even though this yarn is very workable, and the sweater that really sold me on this, the sample that really sold me on this is, some stitches fell off my needle. I'm gonna have to work on that. The sweater that sold me on this was the sample that was knit in the La Bien Me. And so it uses their DK weight yarn and mohair, and it is beautiful. It's a beautiful yellow color, which I love. It looks soft and lovely and wonderful and just really beautiful and elegant, and I loved it. And I wanted exactly that same thing. But when I did the math, I discovered that for me, that sweater would be over $200. And at the moment, that kind of spending is not in my budget for a sweater. But moreover, it's not the kind of sweater that I can comfortably do laundry in and rake the yard and carry in groceries and things like that. For me, a sweater that costs that much and takes that much time to knit needs to be something that I wear to church or to dinner or to coffee with you or what have you. So I needed a more workable sweater. So I chose this Cascade Echo. Look at this yarn. It's like a baby. It's huge. This is a really, I've knit with this before in a shop, like helping somebody else, but I don't have a garment out of this yarn. But what I like about it is that it is a really good working yarn. This was less than $30. I only need 2 to make my sweater. And it has a lot of yardage, 478 yards. So there's quite a bit on this. I will tell you, my ball winder will wind about half of it and then it pops off and I have to hand wrap the rest of it around, which is not fun. Anyway, what I like about this yarn is that it's really affordable. I'll let you know how it wears. I don't know, but I really needed more workable type sweaters in my wardrobe. I have a lot of beautiful, elegant sweaters, but I don't have a lot of sweaters that I feel confident just tossing on and going through my regular day. So I'm hoping that that's what this is going to be. And I can always make it again in a beautiful, elegant yarn if my budget allows for that at some future time. So anyway, I'm knitting this right now and I do love it. It feels soft. This is not merino, it's Highland wool, and it feels soft to me. I'm not it feels soft enough to me. I feel like I could wear this next to skin, but it is a cardigan. So I'm looking forward to, I'm enjoying the process of this. I'm looking forward to having it done. I like the color. I think it's called hay. I don't know what the name of the color is, but it's sort of a yellow, sort of a brown, sort of a green, which is in my wheelhouse. This twisted rib, which is so beautiful, inspired my sock. I don't know if you know, but I typically like to only have about 2 things on my needles. I like to have one larger project and then a sock. My sock is my go-to project. It's always ready in a travel bag when I leave to go anywhere that I might do any wading at all. I usually take a sock with me. Not a beautiful fancy sock like this one, because I had a chart for this and all of that, but just a regular sock that I can just knit. So for me, I have figured out the best way to make a sock for me. And for me, it's the same as you might make a grilled cheese. You don't look up a recipe, you just make it. And it's a little bit different every time, but it's still a grilled cheese. That's how I am with my sock. So this is my sock travel bag. I like it because it has that handle. And then I can knit still and hold on to it if that's your thing. If you're waiting in line or something, this is great for that. And I decided to make a scrappy sock. So I have a bit of this white, and I have a bit of this yarn and a bit of this yarn. So this is the Skeincocaine special ball, which I loved. I fell in love with this and really, really wanted it desperately. And I have a pair of socks out of this. I put a little bit of this yarn in my Stash Dive raglan, but then I decided that there was enough of it that I wanted to work it into a pair of socks, but there weren't enough to make a whole pair. And I haven't yet gotten into the shorty socks, although I have bought patterns for it. I just haven't done it yet. And then this yarn is left over from the last socks that I finished. So this is opal yarn. So I made these socks. Remember these socks? Aren't they cute? So that's what this yarn is left over from. And I decided that I would try something new to me. So what I'm doing is 1 row of each of these yarns. So I do one row of one and then 1 row of the other. And look at the fabric it's making. Isn't this fun? So if you look carefully, you can see that opal patterning still in the background. So you see, can you see this line? That's definitely the opal, and then this here. And then the other socks, you know that there's like color work in the middle, but I'm breaking it up. And the same thing, you can almost see a stripe here. You can almost see a stripe here. But then that special yarn in between, the Skeincocaine, is just kind of breaking it all up. And I just think this is really fun, right? So I think this might be a fun way to do scrappy socks. So we'll see. I just carry the yarn inside. You can see here's the twist, just up one side. And I'm just about to start the heel. I cast on twisted rib at the top here because I just was so inspired by my sweater that I decided to put a little bit at the top of my sock. So that's what I did here. And I did, I think, 12 rows here. And then now I'm doing this. So my socks, for me, I knit from cuff to fingertip. I do my hand, so you can see that's my hand. Then I'll do the heel, and then I knit the sock the rest of the way. If I knit for my husband, this needs to be a bit longer because this isn't a very long sock on him. He's 6'3", so this is about 7 inches, and on him, it just looks puny. Looks almost like a awkward ankle sock. A little bit too long to be an ankle sock and a little too short to be a calf sock. So anyway, but on me, this is fine. And I just think this is a fun way to use up leftovers, and I'm really enjoying the fabric that it's making. So if you have 2 yarns that you don't have quite enough to make, I know I had not quite 50 grams. I think I had 49 grams of this, and I can't remember what I had of this, maybe 38. But I figured I would have enough for 2 pairs of socks because I'm doing the heels, toes, and cuffs in this white. And if in the end I don't have enough, then I'll just finish it off with this yarn, which will be fine. It will be fine. So that's what I'm working on right now. Isn't that fun? That's all I have to tell you. As I said, I think in about 10 days, we're going to have to leave here. So I have cut down the garden for the most part. I still have a couple of hydrangeas to trim, but I didn't want to do it because they're still blooming and they're the limelight hydrangeas. So they come out kind of a pale white and then they fade to pink and they're so beautiful. So I didn't cut that down yet. And then we have a bunch of stuff to do. I have to wash all of the bedding and take care of all of the porch things, and I scrub everything down so that when we come in the spring, it's just a quick wipe down and we can get going. And we're starting to eat out of the pantry, so that requires a lot of creative recipe making. So yesterday I took a can of beans and a can of tomatoes and cooked them in a pan with some taco spice and cheese and tortillas, and we had tacos. And I had one red pepper and one red onion, and so that was the best I could do. And I also had some leftover rotisserie chicken. There's a lot of ingredients that now we're trying to cobble together. So I have like grits and oatmeal and flour and cornmeal, and all of that stuff has to go home, and we don't leave any of that stuff here because I'm super scared of them and I don't want them to think that this is a good place for them. So we're trying to go through that. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you guys are getting a lot more knitting done than I am. I think the next time that I podcast, it's going to be from the other house. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for taking a little time with me.